Still sounds as fresh and fabulous as it did first time around. Here he is, Mr. Boy George, ladies and gentlemen. It's fabulous to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's been quite the year for you, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an amazing year for me, actually, in a lot of ways. I mean, it hasn't all been awful.
Let me ask you about the jail thing, then, that part, because how much of the year did you spend in jail?
4 months. I mean, I'm still kind of a prisoner now, because I'm still on licence. I spent 4 months in jail, 4 months on tag, home detention, which meant I was on a curfew from 7 to 7. I could go out between those hours. And
so you could go out between 7 in the morning, had to be home by 7 at night?
Yes.
Weekends you had to stay in or go out?
Yeah, I couldn't go in my garden.
You can't even leave the house in the,
no,
the garden?
Couldn't go in the garden either.
How do they know where it is? Is there kind of...
You have a Peckham Rolex on your leg.
I hear they're quite sought after.
And then basically, if you go out of range, obviously, it buzzes. And I mean, I had no trouble with it. You know.
And how do they set the range? They have things in the house that, like...
They have these kind of, like, plug-in phone things, yeah.
So you couldn't take one of those out in the garden with you?
No.
How did you feel about... I mean, that must have been preferable to being in jail in the same
situation.
situation.
Well, in a funny sort of way, when I came off tag, I got a bit kind of depressed because all the time I was at home on tag, I kind of had a get-out clause for everything.
Yeah.
So if I didn't want to go somewhere, I could say, I can't do that, I'm on tag, you know, which was great. And then suddenly I had to...
That's great.
You know,
so all these things you didn't want to go to, the friends maybe inviting or family inviting.
Yeah, I could kind of say, oh, I can't, I've got to be home by 7. So it was great. And, you know, and then suddenly it was like, I can't use that excuse anymore. You know?
I want to get one of those things, but I don't want to get it the same way you did. OK, how many months were you sentenced for in jail?
15 months.
15 months. So you knew with time off for good behaviour you'd probably only do about 4 or 5.
Well, first time sentence is usually, yeah, you do 4 months.
So it's 4 months.
Depending on, you know, you do a sort of quarter of your sentence.
And don't take this the wrong way, but I'm a bit surprised it was your first sentence. Like
me too.
Because, you know, you...
Wrong end of my game, that's the problem.
So this was the kind of... Because you'd had brushes with the law in the past.
Yeah,
drug related,
you know, in a way I had it coming for a while, you know, so... You know, it wasn't that big a surprise for me.
And so when you knew you were going to go inside, that must have been a very grim and difficult thing to get your head around.
Well, you know, I kind of knew it was going to happen. I expected it to happen. I mean, everyone around me was like, no, you get a suspended sentence. But because in my head I'd kind of believed that I was going to prison, by the time it happened, I'd kind of got my head around it.
You were ready for it?
Yeah, and... I knew that, you know, how long it would be in the end, and, you know, I just kind of got on with it, you know.
And presumably you knew already the rules and restrictions that would apply in there in terms
No,
of...
not at all. I had no idea. I mean, I'd never been to prison before, you know.
But
it was a first-time experience.
Is there not a website you can go to, or people you can say, I would have been checking out, what can I take, what should I pack?
No,
you know?
There's very little information about what can happen. You know,
so when you're in there, who tells you that? On the first day they explain that to you, or...?
Well, no, there's nothing explained to you. You just get taken and, you know, and then you're in there, you know.
Who takes you there? Do you have to go to
burly men.
So you go to a police station, do you, and hand yourself over?
No, you go... I went straight from court. You go from court into a waiting cell, and then you go into one of those vans, those Serco vans, you know, like a sardine, and then you go off, and, yeah, it's... I mean, the first kind of... I think the first 48 hours were a little bit of a shock to me.
I can imagine.
I mean, the funniest thing was I watched Obama's inauguration when I was in Pentonville, and that was like contrast, you know. I should be there, you know, but, you know, whatever. I just got on with it, you know.
But what were you said the first 48 hours were a bit of a shock. How so? What was going through your head? What did you miss? What were you fearful of?
Well, it's the unknown, you know. I mean, you walk in... Pentonville is a Victorian prison, so it's the classic, you know, every movie you've ever seen, it's that kind of setup. So you walk in and you've got the balconies, the safety nets, people shouting, "I'm a chameleon," banging things. That doesn't happen in every prison.
I was going to say that's... I don't remember that ever happened to Jimmy Cagney.
No, but, you know, you get a lot of attention when you first go in, and especially if you're Boy George.
They knew you were coming, I guess.
Oh, absolutely, they knew I was coming, yeah. So, you know, I got a lot of attention, but... In a funny sort of way, you know, people were actually quite sweet, you know. I mean, people were coming and saying, "Oh, do you need a toothbrush? You know, do you want a mirror?" No, people were actually really nice.
But this is
There's some nice people in prison.
Well, of course, because Was there any talk of a kind of an escape, a breakout? Did you start? Did you plan? Did you have spoons ready?
No, I wasn't there. I wasn't there really long enough.
You didn't have a big poster like Shawshank, and you were chipping away, chipping away.
I knew he was going to do this.
Reduce it to trivial nonsense. Yeah. No, you know, I can't understand. I can't begin to. I think. I mean, I empathise with you, but I can't understand how that must have felt, because you've gone from being, you know, a very, very celebrated public figure, someone who's had their public ups and downs, but suddenly your freedom is taken away from you, and it is taken from you, isn't it?
Well,
That's the
you
thing.
know, it is and it isn't. You know, what you do when you're in there is you kind of think, well, OK, how am I going to make this work for me? You know, what's the best thing to do? Got a job really quickly. I worked in the kitchen. I made all the vegetarian food, you know, and I just got on with it. And the more you do that, the quicker it goes, the less hassle you get, you know, because the people that are there, they're not the reason you're there. And they're actually quite nice, you know. Yeah. They're all very friendly to me. I think they expected me to be like Ruth Ballinger in that Prisoner Cell Blockade, so if you remember that. Take my coat. I think they, you know, with me, they probably thought I was going to be a complete nightmare. And the fact that I wasn't.
Yeah, they thought you'd be how we imagine Elton John would be in that situation.
Yeah, they thought I was going to be difficult. In fact, talking of Elton, he actually sent me this huge ghetto blaster when I was there, and I couldn't have it, unfortunately. They wouldn't let me have it. But,
because, you know, if you opened up, there were knives and stuff there. It was a fire. It was a giant fire.
Let it go. But, you know, it was very sweet, you know, and you know, the governor...
But that is very sweet that he did that.
It was very sweet, and the governor said that it was like a Blue Peter appeal down the...
So they had a lot of stuff coming in for you?
Oh, I mean, people were sending me teapots and kettles and eiderdowns. I got sent a chocolate willy, which was quite funny. And I got this piece of paper stuck under my cell door to say that I couldn't have it. You know.
That's even worse, isn't it?
Yeah, I was very
And when you saw the warden, did he have a little telltale mark around his mouth?
I never said that.
He'd been enjoying
one of the funniest things that happened was somebody sent me a boys' magazine. I don't know if you know what boys' magazine is.
No.
It's a gay magazine. And I was going through it, and then I realised they'd kind of covered up all the willies. So somebody had actually gone through the magazine and spent quite a long time covering them up.
Is that like an advent calendar, though? Are you allowed one a day? As it gets nearer to Christmas. Oh, we saved the big one. Oh, look at that.
That did make me laugh. But, you know, I mean, the thing is, you know, yeah, I made friends in there. I got lots of letters from, you know, people that I didn't know.
Well, there was a lot, I know, an awful lot of goodwill towards you.
Yeah,
a lot of people
absolutely, and I was very grateful for that.
And I think what was interesting was, you know, the fact that you seemed quite accepting of it. You know, you weren't someone who you didn't start complaining, you didn't start pleading it was an injustice. You know, you obviously were getting on with it. And I suspect, please correct me, from the part of you thought, OK, this is something which I can use to take me to the next stage in my life.
What, like make a hip-hop album? No, I mean, you know, it wasn't a career move, Jonathan.
I know it wasn't a career move.
And the album's out next week.
It's a concept album.